Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night right here at the Sports Crib. Uh, wow, where has the time gone? Only two more shows until Christmas. I mean, wow, already. Okay. I see my two cohorts are down there in the queue, but let's get our little commercial stuff out of the way here. You can check us out on YouTube. Our Cash App is running right there on the bottom of the screen. $ JEK3. All proceeds go to help keep us on the air, as well as a few prizes every now and then. Speaking of which, our gold shirt for the Fantasy League, I will be putting in an order tonight. So we can look for the winner again this year in our Fantasy Sports Club League. So let's get down to the facts here. I see Mr. Carroll is in town tonight. How you doing, Bill?
Hello there. Good to see you.
Yeah. As well as Dave. How you doing, Dave?
Hey guys, doing well. Hope you both had a great Thanksgiving and are getting into the Christmas mode.
Right. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly overate as usual. You know, engaged in my eggnog. I do have a little thing for my eggnog over the holidays, New Year's and Christmas, Thanksgiving. But yeah, so I did indulge a little bit over the holidays, as we all usually do. The one thing I did miss this year was my oyster dressing, though. I do like that. That's kind of my holiday treat. But it's kind of hard to cook oyster dressing for one. So it's,
I have to invite somebody over, James.
Exactly.
Boom, problem solved.
But yeah, so anybody got a favorite dish for the holiday? Other than my oyster dressing, of course, I'm sure.
I'm a pecan pie guy in terms of the favorite thing to eat. My favorite thing to make probably is cornbread stuffing. I also make pretty good macaroni and cheese. And the thing that people last raved about for my potluck at my job is I made chili, and people, went nuts for it.
Now, it's a good thing that Don's not here, because we have that controversy about chili, with beans, without beans, But anyway.
I mean, not to get into it, but for those who actually have a history of chili, it is a poor person's staple. Of course it's with beans, because beans are cheap. Only rich people can afford to make a poor person's meal without beans.
No, well, like I said, we might have some cowboys calling in tonight. We'll see.
All they want. History is history, and facts are facts.
But what about you, Dave? Anything? On the table.
My job at Thanksgiving is to prepare the turkey, get it in the oven. We stuff it, and but I also do the cranberry sauce. So I usually make a couple different cranberry sauces. A traditional one with just the liquid, the cranberries, and the sugar, and then I'll improvise with the other one. But we had like 18 people over.
Oh,
so we had an extra turkey that we got from Mission Barbecue, a smoked turkey. Mine was just like roasted or traditional.
Shout out to Mission Barbecue.
Yeah, they do a great job. It's just that their meat is a little bit spicy.
Yes.
With the smoke, but with the cranberry sauce, with that Mission Barbecue smoked turkey, it is really good, because you get the sweet with the spicy, and it really comes out good. But so that's what I like doing is getting the stuff prepped and getting it in there, and trying different things. So this year was the cranberry sauce with that smoked Mission barbecue turkey. And in my turkey, I used slathered that in butter and had it in the roaster, and it came out really, really nice. And then a trick I learned this year, usually you put tinfoil over it while it's in the oven. Well, instead of using tinfoil from a Chef Ramsay video, I put strips of bacon on top of the turkey.
Right.
So that then when it was done roasting, it took the place of the tinfoil, but then you chop that up and use some of the bacon bits for the gravy from drippings, and then use the rest for the salad. So that worked out really nice.
Let's see, butter, bacon. I'm sure you weren't worried about your cholesterol there.
It's all health food for Dave.
It's all good.
But
I see Bo is here tonight also.
Shout out to Mission Barbecue, the founder of Team MBS, of formerly Nuts and Bolts Sports, but now Team MBS Media. Joe Cardoza is a chef and now I guess a regional trainer, I think, for Mission Barbecue. Helps them open up their new location in Fort Collins, Colorado. So shout out to Mission Barbecue.
All right, guys. Well, we usually find something. Well, first of all, do we have a Sue's Corner tonight?
We do.
Yes, we do. And by the way, Bo just dropped a message at a Christmas party, but have a great show, guys.
All right.
So he just dropped the message in there. All right, so Sue's Corner. And it's timely given the recent TV show. Mike Tomlin hit a milestone this weekend when the Steelers ensured him another winning football season, his 18th. And actually, the Steelers streak goes back to 2004, to Ben Roethlisberger's rookie year. Tomlin is a future Hall of Famer, I'm sure, and the longest tenured head coach in the NFL. As Steelers fans, we can be fickle, blame the coach for a lot of things that probably aren't even his fault. But since a football team is like a company and he is the CEO, the buck does stop with him. It's part of the job. What you rarely hear, however, is any negative comments from his players, or even players from other teams. I have heard on TV several of the former players, now NFL commentators, say how much they wished they had the opportunity to work with him. That is due in part to several things. Not only is he considered a good strategist, but he is also thought of as a decent human being, one that cares about the players personally, just not what they can do on the field. There are countless stories of him counseling players going through personal strife, making sure that they can spend time with their families to deal with whatever tragedy has befallen them. And there are an equal number of stories of him playing hardball with you, calling you out in front of other players, pulling you aside to ask you where your head is at, if he feels that is an effective way to get your attention. The fact that he publicly said in the press conference after the game Sunday that Pickens, quote, needs to grow up, unquote, is a good example of that. That was a verbal slap on the side of the helmet. We Burgers are lucky to have Tomlin. As much as we may not like to admit it sometimes, like when we can't quite make it into playoffs as far as we would like. But I think we are fortunate to have such a fine representative of the kind of people we'd like to think of ourselves as coming from the Steel City. Tough but kind. Looking out for our friends, family, colleagues, but not, as my mom would say, catering to any kind of nonsense. And that's Sue's Corner. And just an aside, a couple former Steelers, Ryan Clark, he has a sickle cell anemia. And part of that, one of the side effects is when he played in Denver due to the high altitude, he was hospitalized. I think he lost his spleen over that.
He lost his spleen, yep.
A few years later, he got medical clearance to play. And I think it was in 2000. They played twice more when he was with the team in Denver, and he didn't play in either game. but I think it was the 2012 season. He had medical clearance. He went to the coach. He said he was ready to go. He wanted to go play. They needed to go win. And Mike Tomlin told him, I wouldn't let my own son play under those circumstances. And that's the way Mike Tomlin regards him. And Willie Colon just related another story where when he was in a deep depression, Mike Tomlin reached out to him and pulled him out. And so I think Sue's corner is a really nice one.
Yeah, a lot of people criticize Mike, but like I always say, if not Mike, who? Name give me a replacement.
It's easy to fire coaches. It's hard to hire coaches, people. I've been following Mike Tomlin since he was a 16-year-old, right? First time he caught my eye, he was playing for the Denby Demons, Blue Devils, sorry, at Denby High School. And, was a mouthy little receiver I saw take just wicked shots, get blasted, right? Get laid out by this safety from, might have been Indian River High School. Laid him out, popped up, chirping. And I remembered that. Like, he got crushed. He wasn't very big. Not surprisingly, he's not very big now. And, I saw him all throughout his career at William & Mary. And then I sort of lost track of him for a little bit. And then, boom, I hear about him at Kansas State. And then I followed his career again from there forward. Here's what people sometimes, lose track of. If you did, for some ungodly reason, decide you wanted to move over to Mike Tomlin, one, do you know how many teams would get rid of their current head coach to hire him, right? His agent's phone would almost literally explode. He would be unemployed for 0.8 seconds. It is insane to me how many Steelers fans are just so spoiled and dumb when it comes to him. And I think race, for some of them, plays a part in it. I would like to be wrong, but I didn't hear them whine quite as hard, the older ones, about Cowher. And Cowher had a couple of losing seasons. So
they went after Cowher too, right up until
but not the same way. And once again, Cowher at least sort of had it coming in that he did have a couple of legitimate down years. What I'm saying is that the implications were never that Cowher didn't know how to do certain things, right? People thought that maybe he was to this or to that. You never say, he doesn't really understand how to coach. I've heard people imply that Tomlin is not one of the smarter coaches. And once again, I think race makes a part in it.
Oh, especially during his first 5 years.
I heard these little whispers, and I don't know, whatever. I would love to be wrong on this. I would love to be wrong. Because I'm a Steelers fan. I would not like to think there's people who think this way in our fan base. But I've heard and seen some things, Dave, that don't make sense. That I've heard people say about him that I don't see them saying about inferior coaches to him, right? And once again, the same thing. Like, who would you want? Who would you get, right? Who would you get? Do you want to go after a 71-and-a-half-year-old Bill Belichick? That's the only person who even makes a tiny bit of sense, but he doesn't make sense either, right? The only one I've heard people bring up Vrabel, and once again, no offense, but all the same weaknesses that Tomlin has are the same weaknesses that Vrabel has, but Tomlin is better in every way that I can measure coaching. So, whatever. I don't get people's problems with it.
Anyway, let's get this show on the road here, guys. We could probably spend all day talking about Mike Tomlin. He's always been one of my favorite coaches. I was kind of afraid for his career after the first 5 years, but after that, I think most Steelers fans and I might have to kind of agree with Dave on this one, Bill, because I don't think that Steelers fans are as much ingrained with that prospect simply behind the reputation of the Rooney family and the organization.
Sure.
We have had some firsts as far as, the
Rooney family is not the issue, but there's some fans.
Yeah, well, fans
scrub.
but the thing of it is that fans don't sign the paycheck, so that's.
Oh, I agree. Thank God for that. Because there were fans who, good Lord.
So,
Well,
guys,
say.
as usual, I'm not one that's afraid to dip my toe in the pool here, and want to get some opinions on some controversial things.
Yep.
I wish we had some more women on. I would have liked to get their opinion on this particular subject, but anyway, since I wrote this question, the young lady or the person in question has already played their last game for San Jose State, so that won't be a problem going forward as far as that particular conference is concerned. But it tends to bring me to the question that I ask because we had two teams. I think it was Boise State was one, and I forget who the other one was. Who was the other one, Bill?
I don't know, maybe BYU. I mean, I
No, it wasn't B, but anyway, they forfeited the remaining games and forfeited going to the tournament because of this alleged transgender player. And my question kind of is, well, it's twofold. First of all, there seems to be a lot of controversy as far as transgender men or, well, being transgender from a man to a woman, but I haven't heard as much flack on the other way, a woman being transformed into a man. So my question is, number one, is there a place for transgender persons in sports? And number two, how would you equate the differences? Because evidently this person has passed the doping test.
And every other test, yes.
So,
correct.
Right. I'm sure, that if it was the other way around, the amount of testosterone would definitely, would that affect the same type of testing? But anyway, Bill, you want to go first, and then we'll let Dave talk.
So 60 years ago, this question was being asked, but instead of being about transgender athletes, it was Black athletes, right? There's always been a question about should we allow whoever to participate?
Come on.
I'm pointing out the fact that our nation has dealt with the similar questions for many, many years. Should we allow this? Should we allow that, right? Are we inclusive or not? That is really what it comes down to. Do we want to exclude or include? That's really that's all the question is. We include or exclude. That's it. That's really what it comes down to. And if this person indeed has passed every single test that they've been given for 2+ years, which my understanding they have since 2022, 2023, and now we're in 2024, every single test has been given. My understanding is they passed. If someone has different information, please bring it forward. But my understanding is that every single test has been administered, they have passed. So if we are deciding whether or not someone can compete based on the medical test, this person is allowed to compete. That's my understanding. If we're going to use a medical standard or a scientific standard as opposed to people's feelings as a standard, then this person is allowed to compete. Now, if we're going to use people's feelings as a standard, now we're talking about something very different. So I guess now instead we're going to, I don't know, have a survey. I mean, you tell me what we're going to do with using people's feelings as opposed to science. But if we're going to use science, science says this person is able to compete. And yes, this is very much analogous to questions about homosexual athletes or Black athletes or whoever it is, because there's always somebody who wants to say, we can't allow this. We have to protect the fill in the blank of who we have to protect, right? Whether it's the white race or white women or whoever it is, there's always someone who needs protecting, right? And women or whoever it is needs protecting from fill in the blank. And we're always going to deal with that, right? There's always somebody afraid of the other, whoever the other is, whether it be blacks, homosexuals, transgender, whoever it is, somebody is the other. And there's always fear of the other. It's a natural, normal part of human nature. I get it. I understand it completely, right? I took psychology classes and all that good stuff. I get why people are afraid of the quote unquote other. But unless you are going to just say, we're not going to allow this, which I guess is what the question is, then you have to come to a point of how you decide how to allow. And once again, if science rather than feeling is what the deciding factor is, science says, yes, this person competes.
Dave?
All right. Yeah. First of all, science says that there are two sexes, male and female, biological sexes. And actually, the question asks, should transgender athletes be allowed in sports? The answer is they are. And as James pointed out, you don't see as much of an issue with boys or girls transitioning to boys. Well, that's simply because they're at a competitive disadvantage because they're biological girls. And so they are not winning championships. They are not winning races, swimming races, and all of this. And it's just not a matter of a test. It's, most of the development happens when you're in puberty. And so you have boys that have transitioned to girls that you take the sport of mixed martial arts. You take the sport of boxing, they'll destroy the girls. And there are videos of that. You take a game like volleyball. There have been multiple girls that have been hospitalized by biological boys that transformed or became a girl. And so it's not a matter of fear of the unknown. It's a competitive disadvantage. And those transgender athletes, they can still compete. So like, for example, in Maryland high school wrestling, boys wrestling is considered a co-ed sport. So that any girl, whether she's a natural born girl or a boy that's is transgender and is now a girl, can compete in boys wrestling. And if they qualify, they can compete in the boys tournament. And so, like, for example, we have a famous girl wrestler, Helen Maroulis. Way back in 2006, as a freshman, she placed in the Maryland State tournament, boys tournament. And she's an Olympic medalist now.
Very much aware of her.
Okay. And now, but any girl, whether natural born girl or a transgender girl, can compete in the boys tournament. Now, today, Maryland has a girls tournament, which is for girls and natural born girls. And they have but they still have the choice. If they want to compete against boys, they can. And if they qualify, they can compete in the boys tournament, or they can compete in their own girls tournament. But this is a matter of competitive advantage and disadvantage. And that's all there is to it. There's nothing preventing a boy that becomes a transgender girl from competing in sports.
Well, then let me ask the two of you this, because and I'm only asking you this because you're both servicemen. What about a don't ask, don't tell type of policy, which evidently, since this person is alleged, evidently no one's had to prove anything else, and as Bill says, evidently she's past the science part of it. So should we do like they used to do in the service? Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, but I don't know what science Bill's talking about, because each different organization sets their own standards.
But
Correct.
And so there's not a broad brush. Hey, science has proven, they took a test and they had so much. It depends on each individual sporting organization, and they establish their own standards. Now, apparently in the NCAA, she is allowed to compete, but these girls on these other teams are saying, no, they have a competitive advantage, and we don't want to play in those circumstances. And there are examples of girls that have been hospitalized playing volleyball against boys.
But why didn't they do this 2 years ago instead of waiting until now after the championship is on the line? I mean, evidently, I just found out. I'm not really familiar with this. I've just found out about it within the last 6 months.
I don't know about this particular stance, but there have been various girls teams that have sat out competitions all through it in high school, different competitions. That's been happening, but there's extreme pressure for them not to.
Well, evidently, I mean, they're talking about getting a federal judge involved and things like that. But I didn't really want to get that much involved into it. But Bill, what do you think? Don't ask, don't tell.
Well, I mean, except that we know that just like what happened with the military, it didn't really work. People always are going to ask, and people are always going to want to tell the truth. I mean, there's a natural desire to be honest, at least in most people. There's a natural desire to be honest. There's a natural desire to not hide who you are for most people, right? There are some people who are comfortable with not disclosing or not being honest, but most people want to live the truth. Most. So that is at best, putting a Band-Aid over a shotgun wound. Now, the one thing where Dave and I think agree is that at some point there should be the science, right? Where everyone, but from the International Olympic Committee through to, the Virginia, Pennsylvania, whatever high school associations and even youth organizations establish what the science means to them. And everyone has it sort of put there you can know ahead of time. As of now, it's like lots of other laws across our country. It's a mishmash, right? Or regulations of rules and this and that, and who draws the line and all that. It's an utter mess. That's, I think, the one place where we probably agree is that there should at some point be a standard devised, and it would take some time. You can't just wake up, roll out of bed and say, here's what it is. It's going to take a little while. But endocrinologists, kinesiologists, a bunch of people from a bunch of different athletic and medical disciplines need to get together and put together, here's how you decide these things. Here's how you fairly decide these things. Because right now there's a lot of emotion involved in this. And I get it, right? I have a daughter, right? I have a 19-year-old daughter. She wasn't very athletic, so this didn't come up that much in her life. But I have lots of relatives who are athletes at, name a sport, softball, basketball, one wrestler. She's in Wisconsin, but like a bunch of different athletes in my extended family and my friend group are young women. And some of them have dealt with this. And some of them said, it wasn't a problem because that person wasn't that good. That's the other thing is I hear, how dominant they are, but most of them aren't, quite frankly, Dave. Most of them just aren't that good. Are some of them tremendous, amazing, fantastic? Sure, but not most. Most of them just aren't that good. For every Leah Thomas, there's a bunch of people you don't even know the name of because they aren't that good, right? They just aren't that good. So I've known, female, genetically, biologically female athletes who played against and destroyed these transgendered super people. So while there are some who I agree have all these competitive advantages over women, over biological women, not all of them do apparently, because some of them are out there getting their asses kicked.
Well, just like there's some women, such as Helen Maroulis, that showed that she could defeat boys, but that's not the rule. That's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah,
I'm agreeing that not most biological women can beat most biological males. What I'm saying is, despite all the fears, we don't see a huge dominance of transgendered athletes over women athletes. They're not sweeping in the Olympics. They're not walking away with 50% or even 30%.
Right now, there's not that many.
Right. And there never will be.
With it, if you talk to Riley Gaines, she would beg to differ.
Well, Riley Gaines is an activist, and I've been an activist myself.
She's a swimmer that was basically robbed of trophies because she lost to a biological male.
I'm very familiar with Riley Gaines, and I don't dispute some of what she says, but some of what she says is for effect, which is fine. Once again, I've been an activist. I know what activists do. I understand the messaging and why she's so effective at some of the messages she puts out there. But there's definitely some, how do I put this? Some sprinkling of some stuff over what actually may have actually happened to get certain reactions out of people. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, well,
it was beat by a biological male. That's as simple as that. There's not like some dog whistling going on. I mean, that was a simple fact.
All right, guys. Well, I just brought it up. I was just, because I think this is something that sports in general is going to have to deal with, especially, talking about the Olympics, talking about some other sports, volleyball, wrestling, whatever. But it's going to be interesting to see, especially after we now have a federal judge and his ruling, how things kind of shape out. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch over the next 4 years, especially. All right, let's go to some a little college football here, and it seems that Mr. Andrew Luck has made an appearance back with the pigskin, but now he's going to be what is called the general manager of football for the University of Stanford, his old alma mater. So this new type of design where you have a football general manager, and if you read the article, there's a couple other things sprinkled in there as far as making sure the school gets the right publicity and all that good stuff. But he does have some managerial, I guess you want to call it extracurricular things to do. But what do you think about this? Do you think this is going to be a model for most of the bigger leagues, Dave?
Well, I mean, in a way, because with Andrew Luck, he's been given very broad responsibilities. And in fact, he's going to be evaluating the coaching staff itself. So what they've done is they've put a layer between the head coach and the athletic director. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because there's going to be some coaches that aren't going to like operating under that type of a scheme. But I think that the key to make this work, I think each college or conference is probably going to be adopting their own models that work for them. And I think, in this case, Andrew Luck has very broad responsibilities at Stanford. But what they're going to have to do, whatever model they adopt, kind of like with the NFL, where, you had Jerry Jones, the general manager of the Cowboys. With Pittsburgh, the general manager is not the boss of the coach. But in other organizations, the general manager is the boss of the coach. But I think that the two key factors for these general managers is, one is that they're going to have to maximize fundraising in order to offer the most NIL. And at the same time, they're going to have to minimize turnover due to the transfer portal. And I see those as the two primary functions that they could take a big load off of the head coaches so that they could focus on the product on the field.
Well, good evening, Jeffrey. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be on.
Oh,
Doing well.
glad to have you. Bill, I'm going to let you tackle this before we go to Jeff.
Well, it's already been something that's happening more and more, and not always just at the largest program. You'll find similar titles at Georgia State. So it's not just a big school thing, per se. So more and more schools have either a director of football operations, a director of player personnel, and or a general manager. And this is a trend that really started a few years ago. One of my very best friends is the director of player personnel at Ole Miss. So there's very often somebody. Now they may not be, as Dave said, over the head coach. Many of them work with the head coach, and some of them work for the head coach. But they have the overarching responsibility for talent acquisition, both through the traditional recruitment means from junior college and high school, but also sort of what we call pro player personnel responsibilities, at least at the professional level. So I guess college, 4-year college player personnel decisions, including who you want to help exit your program and who you want to bring into your program from other 4-year institutions. So they're managing the transfer portal, they're managing NIL or working with the team that manages NIL, and they are reporting either to the coach the comings and goings of players and as well as NIL deals and negotiations. And as I said, taking that off of the plate of the coach. If I were Dabo Swinney, I would be desperately looking to hire someone to do that because it's clear he doesn't want to deal with it. But once again, Jeffrey can talk about that, I guess, more in a moment. But yes, it is something that is becoming increasingly common, but not just at the big school level. It's happening at other levels as well.
Jeffrey, we were just talking about Andrew Luck being hired by his old alma mater. As Bill mentioned, this would probably be an excellent for Dabo since he doesn't like the portal and all the new rules. What's your thought? Is this going to be something of the design of the future, or do you think things are going to remain relatively the same?
Yeah, I think you're going to see more of this in the future. These general manager type positions. You're seeing other schools like here in the ACC. Georgia Tech just hired an NFL executive. I think from the Chicago Bears to run some of their activities. Clemson is looking into that same position. So I think in some form or another, you're going to see more and more, and how they look exactly might change and vary a little bit from school to school. But you're basically going to have like these general manager, these folks are going to be in charge of the business and financial aspect of these players and their NIL deals. And I think you're going to just see more and more schools doing it where they're going to hire people with backgrounds in those kind of areas. I think a lot of schools attempted to kind of go it with their athletic administrative offices and just realize like, hey, we're out of our depth here. We need to get people who are experienced with the financial part of athletics.
Yeah, like you said, it seems like they were just getting in a little bit too much over their head, and
Yep.
you almost have to expand. But Jeffrey, a lot of things happen there in the ACC, so I'm going to kind of let you take charge here for a moment. We want to talk about the firing of Mac Brown. Uh, I guess, well, the letting go of Mac Brown. I don't know whether you want to call it a firing or not, but anyway, it is. No more Mac Brown at UNC. Uh, and you might want to talk a little bit about how Alabama sneaked in over top of Miami.
Yeah. The Mac Brown situation was definitely a little bit weird. Um, I think he wanted to come back and coach another year or two, and they made the decision to kind of force him out the door. Where his last game was that NC State UNC rivalry, and I mean, it was kind of clear that maybe North Carolina needed to go in another direction. I think Mac Brown had did all he could there. Um, he had Drake May, he had Sam Howell at quarterback, and he still couldn't quite get over the hump and really, make North Carolina a contender. But he is one of the legends of the game and one of the really good guys in college football, and you kind of hate to see him go out in kind of that unceremonious way. um, you kind of felt like, hey, can you work something out to where he at least could have coached the bowl game and maybe go out that way? But just kind of a ugly situation there at North Carolina, and they've had some weird situations there between their board of trustees and their athletic director. There's like this big power struggle going on there where they're kind of like publicly going after. Then you have a lawyer in the state of North Carolina who took the board of trustees to court and ended up winning because they were having um, private meetings that needed to be public. So just the whole kind of administration part of North Carolina this whole year has been a little bit sideways and not a good look, with the way I think the Mac Brown situation was handled. When you go and look at what happened to Miami and Alabama, that I mean I like to see the ACC do well, and where it makes sense, I'm gonna try to defend it, but it's really hard for me to to have to gripe too much if you're Miami. You controlled your own destiny. Your two of their final three games, you lost two of your final three games, and that just opened the door for the committee. You know that if there's a team that's going to get a benefit of the doubt in the entire country, it's going to be Alabama. If they're if they can shoehorn Alabama in, they've done it time and time again, not just last year. They're going to do it again this year if they have the opportunity. But Miami controlled their own destiny. If they would have took and it was a dangerous game. I mean, there was no doubt that Syracuse was more than capable of knocking off Miami. But you've got to be able to, go into the JMA Dome and take care of business, and we wouldn't be having this discussion. And so you can cherry pick. The committee's going to cherry pick the statistics that favor Alabama, and that's exactly what they did. Of course, they left off. How many losses does Alabama have to teams with fewer than 7 wins? That was conveniently left off, but you knew it was going to happen. And it's not like a situation like last year where, in my opinion, Florida State was clearly robbed of a spot uh, in the Final Four. Here was a situation where you put yourself in a position where it could happen, and it did happen. Um, for me, the bigger concern is if SMU loses to Clemson on Saturday. There, I would think that would be highway robbery if SMU gets bumped out in favor of Alabama. And to me, by any logic and reason, you can't penalize a team for playing in their championship game, dropping them 5 spots to let Alabama in. But from what we've seen, you can't assume that they won't do it, because if there's a team they're going to give the benefit of the doubt to, it's going to be Alabama. So SMU needs to take care of business, even though I firmly believe that they should be in. You can't assume that the committee's going to do the right thing, because they've done the wrong thing several times and they could do it again. So SMU needs to go out, take care of business, and they'll be the number 3 seed. They'll have a bye, and uh, Clemson, they have some talent on that Clemson team, and they can win that game. But as we've seen during the course of the year, uh, Clemson has face planted. We got to be honest; they've face planted on the biggest stages. this season. Blown out by Georgia first game of the year. Had a perfect opportunity to really make noise in the ACC and got blown out by Louisville. The score might have been 33-21, but make no mistake, they were blown off the field by Louisville. I was at that game, and if they'd have played that game 5 more times, they would have lost 5 more times. And then you have the game against South Carolina, a game they were in control of, and just fell apart late in the game when they let Sellers, look like the second coming of Lamar Jackson in the second half, and then Klubnik in position to kick a game-tying field goal throws a unforgivable interception, inside the 15-yard line. So, they've had opportunities and they haven't closed the deal. But they get another chance against SMU. They win. They beat SMU. They're in the playoffs. So I think Dabo's got 9 lives this year, and he's on life number 9 in the ACC championship game.
Bill, any concerns when you saw Alabama sneak in over Miami?
I mean, Alabama's just not that good, right? I mean, that's my only issue is Alabama's not that good. I've watched literally every Alabama game at least once, and some of them more than once. And the things that jumped out at me, when you think about Alabama, you think about their offensive and defensive lines and how even in their quote-unquote down years, how they're just loaded. They're just okay. Their offensive and defensive lines are just okay. Their offensive line might be pretty much dead on average for the SEC. The defensive line is slightly better than average, but not anything special. And so people focus on Jalen Milroe. They've had way worse quarterbacks than Jalen Milroe have been just fine before. Jalen Milroe is a slightly above average Alabama quarterback. Think about the last 25 years of Alabama quarterbacks. He's better than Brody Croyle. He's better than John Parker Wilson. He's better than a bunch of those guys. But he has more on his shoulders than most of those guys do because Alabama lacks the ability to generate consistent, just pounding the ball at you, right? That's Alabama football, right? They get 3 and 4 yard runs that by the fourth quarter are 15 and 16 and 20 and 8, 30-yard runs. And then they hit you with enough play action that you lose to them 27-13. You can't move the ball on them, especially between the tackles. And, their secondary has usually got 2 or 3 top, 60, 70 prospects in it. None of that's true this year. They have one really, really good player in their secondary that I think will be a star in the NFL. They have one pass rusher who I think is going to go maybe in the top 50 or 60. Their interior defensive line, which is usually ridiculously good, is just okay. And their linebackers are just, they have one good linebacker, but nothing, not mind-boggling, but good. Maybe a top 120-100-ish prospect. Their running backs are running backs, but they're not anything super special. They're not the best running backs in the SEC. They're not the second best running backs. Not the third. They're not top 5 running backs in the SEC. None of the top 5 running backs in the SEC play for Alabama. None of the top 4 or 5 wide receivers in the SEC play for Alabama. Maybe a top 4 quarterback in the SEC, maybe in Milroe. Their tight ends are all right. I mean, nothing about that team is special. Except the brand. The only thing special about Alabama is the brand. Everything. If you were to put Mississippi State on that exact same team with the exact same record, nobody would be demanding they make the playoffs.
Dave, what do you think? Alabama is, like Jeffrey says, it's Alabama.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about
TV, right?
we've been talking about the question about whether a 3-loss team would make it into the college football playoffs, throughout, the season. And, hey, if there's a 3-loss team that's going to do it, I guess it's Alabama. I would rather see somebody else in there. I mean, it's just it's getting a little bit old. And, but I think that the benefit of the transfer portal and the NIL to spread the talent around the league to different college programs is really showing. And I'd like to see, what does Alabama look like next year? Are they going to be back to being a top 10 team next year? it'll be, during the course of the season, it'll be interesting. But for me, I would just as soon see somebody else in that slot.
Yeah, a couple teams, maybe. But Jeffrey does bring up an interesting scenario there with SMU. Hey, I guess Saturday the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, I just for the ACC, the Pitt really took a swoon, went from 7-0 to 7-5. They just really fell apart.
Well, their last they put. See, who they play? They just played somebody in the top 25. Beat them, right? Who was that they just?
They just lost to everybody they played in the month of
right,
November.
Yeah,
right. Basketball they've been winning. They've been winning some games, but not football.
Not in football. Not at all.
Not the last month anyway.
Jeffrey, Travis Hunter, Cam Ward, or Ashton Gente? Is it Gente, Bill?
Ashton Gente. And I'm just shocked that no one's even talking about Dylan Gabriel, whose team is undefeated, but whatever.
Yeah, I think Cam Ward is, he's going to get a trip to New York, but I think he's taken himself out of, serious contention for winning it. And through no fault of his own, I think he's been spectacular. But they always start looking, at wins and losses at some point, and losing at the end of the year is definitely going to work against him. So I think you'll see Cam Ward in New York. He'll be a finalist, finish in the top 4. But I think this is a two-person competition between Hunter and Gianti, and I think Travis Hunter is an unbelievable football player. But what Gianti is doing at Boise State, at a G5 school, being the best running back in college football, and he did it against Oregon too. He ran wild against the Ducks, so he even did it against the number 1 team in the country. I think he's the best pure running back in college football since Barry Sanders, and that's including all of the Alabama guys and Eddie George. He's just unbelievable, and for my money, it would be it'd be Gianti to win the Heisman. I think Hunter's going to win it, but if I had a vote, I would vote Gianti.
Oh, yeah, okay. You think Hunter's the favorite? All right. He was 2 weeks ago. You had to bet $10 to win 2. I don't know how the odds have changed, but Bill, first DB since my man over there in Michigan.
Yeah, we have Charles Woodson, obviously the year that still many people are salty about Peyton Williams Manning not winning the Heisman that year. But what Ashton Genti's doing is historic, right? He's having one of the greatest running back seasons ever. You've got to go back to, Ricky Williams. There's a short list of running backs that could be, Ron Dane. There's a short list of guys. Barry was mentioned. Marcus Allen, his 2,000 yard in 11 game season. But outside of a very short list of guys, there's not even many comparable seasons a running back has had in the history of college football. So that has to be mentioned. What people are mentioning obviously about Travis Hunter is that he's a two-way player. And unlike Charles Woodson, who was a spot player on offense, he's a true two-way player. There's games where he plays all but 6 or 7 snaps. I think there's a novelty aspect to it that gives him a bit of an advantage. Is he a better college football player than Ashton Jeanty? I wouldn't say necessarily that he is. I just think that people are excited about the opportunity to see something that they haven't, especially their younger voters, maybe haven't seen before. But yeah, I'm with Jeffrey. I just think that Ashton Jeanty, as important as Travis Hunter is to his team, Boise is, I don't know, maybe a 7-win team without him. 7, 8, maybe 8 wins at most. Hunter obviously is, maybe a top 3 or 4 corner. and a top 7 or 8 wide receiver in college football, and maybe you put those two things together, and maybe to some people that's better than being the best running back by far, right? He's like, it's not even close. Like he's so far out ahead of the person who's second that it's like you could take the number 5 running back and the number 2 running back and put their seasons together, and they wouldn't be Austin Junty's season. That's how crazy Austin Junty's season is.
I'm taking back your DB pin there, Bill. But
I love Travis Hunter. And if you're asking me if I'm a general manager, which guy I'm taking with the number 1 pick overall, that's a different story. I'm taking Hunter as a pro prospect over Austin Junty as a pro prospect. As a college player, Austin Junty.
Dave.
Yeah, I kind of like Travis Hunter. I just like the two-way starter aspect, the two-way player. And for me, I see the Heisman player as the best all-around college football player, not necessarily who's going to succeed in the NFL. You know, we've seen plenty of Heisman winners that have not succeeded in the NFL. But I just, yeah, I mean, there's quite a few, and then there's those that have. But for me, it's who's been the best all-around player, and he's been doing it on both sides of the ball. I know that there was a couple games I wish that he had really stepped up to help Colorado win those games, and then he would be hands down. He would be the Heisman winner. But I'm going to go with Travis Hunter, and I'm kind of glad that they're getting out of this. It's become kind of like the best quarterback for a while there, and I'm glad that this year almost definitely that's not going to happen. And you know, unless maybe if the voting goes when is the vote? Is it this week before they play Saturday or after they play Saturday?
I think it's after they play Saturday, isn't it?
Yeah. So it would be interesting to see. I know, you know, Bill mentioned Dylan from Gabriel from Oregon. You know, whether somebody's performance in the championship game somewhere kind of changes things, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it would be nice to see it go to somebody other than the quarterback, but until it does, I'm still kind of skeptical. Of course, I do agree with Bill as far as Jonte's abilities, but I like Travis Hunter mostly. Like I said, you know. Playing on both sides of the ball.
Well, as a prospect, I love Travis Hunter.
Yeah. Jeffrey, why don't you give us your final thoughts? Good having you as always. Tell us some of the guys that you don't think might be back next year.
Yeah, I think
other than Mac Brown, of course.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you got Taylor there at Stanford. I think he's in a bit of trouble after another 3-win season. Wilcox at Cal, he's been there a while, and he's going to get to a bowl game, but he's been pretty. You know, they had some great moments at Cal this year. Actually, I mean, they won at Auburn. They had Miami on the ropes, but you know, they ended up losing to Florida State, which is this year an atrocious loss. So I did wonder if he'll be back. And then, of course, you've got to talk about Mike Norvell at Florida State. You know, going 2-10, and just I think the really thing with Florida State that was so astonishing is not just that they were really bad, is how poorly coached they looked. And we know Norvell can coach, but I mean, you would watch their games and it would just look like Bad News Bears type things. I mean, just, you know, fumbles and drop passes and you know, defensive backs getting turned on their heels. And I mean, it wasn't just a matter of, DJ Uyunglele early in the year not being a great quarterback. I mean, this whole team was just a complete train wreck. Um, so he's definitely on the hot seat, I think, going into next year. Tony Elliott at Virginia, um, who I think actually was pretty decent most of the year, but I mean, we're going into year 4, and he hasn't yet got to a bowl game, and that's kind of the watermark that you got to do at a school like Virginia, is at least make it to a bowl game. You don't have to win 10, 11 games, um, and be good at Virginia, but you do need to, get to the postseason, and he missed it by a game. So I think next year is very critical for him in Blacksburg. Brent Pry will be back, but the Black fans at Virginia Tech were pretty disappointed in the season. Virginia Tech was supposed to be a dark horse team in the ACC, and you know, had Drones coming back at quarterback, and then they were pretty disappointing. Going 6-6. So a lot of coaches, out there. I don't think you'll see like a mass firing left and right, but a lot of coaches are going into the season on the hot seat next year. As far as my last thought here, I'm kind of watching here the ACC SEC basketball challenge. It's not much of a challenge this year. Uh, there's no other way to put it, but the ACC is getting taken to the woodshed by the SEC, and I mean, you got to give credit where credit is due. The SEC.
Auburn is number 1.
Auburn is, yep, and they're playing in Cameron, and Duke is one of the few teams in the ACC I think is truly legitimate. They hadn't been able to close out games, but they're really talented, and if they could knock off Auburn, it might have kind of reset them, because top to bottom they're extremely talented. Duke is, and I'm not as concerned as with them as I am like North Carolina, for example, who is in real trouble. The Tar Heels have no interior defense, and they play a team like Alabama who does everything they want to do but better, and they're bigger. They got ran off the court by them and Auburn. North Carolina is in a little bit of trouble if they don't figure out how to manage the inside. Clemson is actually one of the really bright spots, knocking off Kentucky last night. They have a really good backcourt with Chase Hunter and the Zachary transfer from Boston College. I was at that game, and they really stood toe-to-toe with a really good Kentucky team. And I think Brad Brownell has got himself another team that can make a pretty deep run come March. But those are the kind of the highlights. Pitt's been pretty good early in the year. They're getting struggling here against Mississippi State tonight, but they've already racked up enough non-conference wins that I think they're going to be fine in the ACC. Just won at Ohio State. They blew out West Virginia earlier in the year, and I think Pitt's got a pretty strong team overall. But right now the ACC is having themselves a struggle in the challenge. But we'll see how it gets to March. I think some teams will start to emerge. I like Duke, Clemson, and it's definitely a down year from top to bottom, but like I said, I think some teams will emerge and be threats come March. So I'm always looking forward to that. As always, thanks for having me. You can find me at Talking ACC Sports and blogging at allsportsdiscussion.com, and with our weekly podcast on Sunday nights with my co-host Matthew at All Sports DACC. So really enjoyed it as always, guys.
Take care, Jeff.
Thanks so much,
Thanks
Jeff.
for joining us, sir.
We'll be getting back to you, of course. Like you said, ACC basketball is coming up, and you're probably our number 1 college guy to go to for basketball. So Bill doesn't quite know all the middle names of the basketball players.
Not these boys, they don't stay long enough. It's too back to the 80s.
Have a good day, Jeff. We appreciate you, my man. All All right, guys, just a couple quick questions here before we, well, not really questions, but I'll give you a quick shot. Bill, real quick, the collapse of Ohio State.
Yes. I mean, what do you want to know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we spent almost all of the season at number 4 or above, and all of a sudden now it comes down when we need to get in the position to get the bye.
Yep.
We blow it to Michigan.
Yep.
So you kind of quick as you can.
Okay, well, as quick as I can. Michigan is mentally and physically tougher than Ohio State. Boom! Done. It's that simple. Sometimes it's that simple. That's it. That's all.
That's it. Oh, okay.
Ohio State's more talented and supposedly better coached. Supposedly.
Dave, we talked about Penn State. You had talked about Penn State and the talent, but it looks like when it comes down here to the end, Penn State might have a much better position than Ohio State, especially if SMU loses. What's your thoughts on Penn State there, Dave?
Well, I wasn't expecting them to be playing Oregon, but thank you, Michigan. I'm just not sure that Penn State can keep up with Oregon. And the one stat that sticks out that people will be seeing: James Franklin and Penn State are 1-13 against teams ranked in the top 5 over the last few years. And I mean, Penn State, in order to have a chance against Oregon, they're going to have to try to control the ball, keep the ball away from Oregon's offense. And then that's going to be up to running back Nick Singleton and Drew Allard passing to Tyler Warren, who's a great tight end. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the big guy that Penn State has is Abdul Carter. They have some defensive backs, but Abdul Carter is the heart of their defense. I think he has like 10 or 11 sacks this year. But that's the problem, is that Penn State has some areas where they excel. I just think that Oregon overall is much better. They have a comparable defense to Penn State, probably better. And if they can bottle up the running back and shut down Warren at tight end, well, Penn State doesn't have too many more weapons to go to. They do have their other quarterback that they bring in, but that's not going to do it. And on defense, it's up to their offensive line to shut down Abdul Carter. And if they're able to do that, Penn State is going to be playing on their back foot. So it would be great. We'll see what Dylan Gabriel does at quarterback against Penn State. But I just think that Oregon has too many weapons for them. But, Penn State's going to be in the college football playoff. Supposing they lose to Oregon, we'll see who they get matched up. They'll probably, maybe be able to win their first round, depending on who they're matched again. But then they might be right back up against somebody like an Oregon or somebody else in the top 4.
Yeah, well, hey, like you said, with the expansion of the Big Ten, there's a good chance, they'll come out of national championship out of the Big Ten. But, we got.
They won the games they were supposed to win.
Yeah, unlike my Buckeyes.
Exactly.
All right, guys, let's. We're going to do something a little different today. Instead of going over the past scores, we're going to talk about the playoffs and the teams. This is going to be our little section where we talk about the teams getting to the playoffs or the ones that didn't make it to the playoffs. It'll be our In the Hunts session, getting to the playoffs. But our first question here, Dave, Week 14 bye. Advantage or disadvantage?
Oh, I think it's a huge advantage. I'm looking at Baltimore. They have a bye coming up right
Next
before they're hitting the stretch of their tough games that they have to win in order to overtake Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had to take their bye several weeks ago, and they're relatively healthy right now. But now they're going to be hitting playing the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chiefs in 10 days. And so any injuries that they have, that you have a guy that has a minor nagging injury, well, that's going to hurt them for that next game. Where now Baltimore's in a position of where they can get healthy, and to be ready for their big push. So to me, I see any type of a late buy like this as a huge competitive advantage. Plus, you have that extra week of game planning against your upcoming opponent. I think Baltimore is something like wins 76% of their games coming out of the bye. So, to me, a big advantage having a bye at this time of the season.
Bill.
It's almost impossible to disagree with what you just said. The only thing I'll say is that if you're a bad team, you want to have your bye a little earlier because it gives you a chance to shake up your team, right? You can move on from an aging quarterback to your young rookie and things like that. If your bye is week 6, week 8, week 9, whatever, and then you can have the rest of the season to try to acclimate this young player who's moved up. But for good teams, it's an enormous advantage. If you're a contender, if you're, the Chiefs wish they could have their bye, right, at this point.
Yes.
There's all the good teams. Your contenders.
Detroit wish they could have a bye.
Right. You would love to have your bye. Week 13, week 14. That's when you'd like to have your bye as a good team, right before that stretch run and, of course, into the playoffs. As a bad team, it matters less, but you prefer to have your bye either right at the end of the first sort of quarter of the season or at the halfway point because you're going to retool. You already know your team's going to be very different next year. You can start turning the page earlier. But for a good team, yes, you want to have your bye late.
Okay, we're going to talk about some matchups here. Bill, the first game, where did Mr. Scott go?
Scott?
He's right there. Or there, or wherever that is. There. He's over there.
No, he's there. He is. There he goes. Okay. All right. So, good evening, Mr. Scott. You're on mute there, so come off mute. And, you act like you just come in from the cold or something.
Yes. And when the wind kicks it up, it takes it to a whole nother level. And then the college, I was taking some notes on your college discussion. I don't do a lot with that due to financial constraints. So I don't do a lot with college.
Well, we're getting ready to talk about the pros now. And
where is Demetrius? I mean, what is this? How can he keep doing load management? I mean, how can he get away with this load management every week? I wanted to talk to him about the 5 interceptions. I wanted to see how he was going to spin that. But
well, he spun it into a W.
That's exactly how he spun it. Yeah.
But Mr. Scott, what do you think about that Week 14 bye? Advantage or disadvantage?
Oh boy, if you get a bye, it looks like you're going to have a home game when you play. So I mean, I think that's quite an advantage. I mean, that's huge. You're at home, you're practicing. The other team, is probably coming off playing. So I think it's a good. Yeah, I'd love to have the bye. I think it's a positive. But I just think too, at the playoffs, it's the mentality of, hey, this is the shot. I mean, it's on the road. what have you. If you can get on the road and make a good stand right away, you can change it around. But yeah, but in general, I think it's good to have that bye.
All right. Well, we're going to start talking about some upcoming games this week that have some importance with the playoffs. And of course, I'm going to start with your division. So I'm going to let you give the first comments on this. We have the Packers that are playing at the Lions. Now, right now, of course, the Lions are 11-1, and the Packers have a chance to possibly make the playoffs and get 3 teams out of your division in. But it seems like the road goes through Detroit. What's your take on this week's game, the Packers visiting the Lions?
Boy, that should be a good game. I mean, with the Packers, the way they're playing these days, that could be a trap game of certain. Of course, it's on Thanksgiving, in Detroit. That's going to be a tough one. But I think they should have a lot of incentive. They're right in it, and if they can pull that off, it would certainly help us. It would help us immensely. I would love to see that. But yeah, Packers playing good ball, and like I said, it could be a trap game. I was telling this girl about a trap game, and she says, "Well, what's a trap game?" I said, "Well, a trap game is when you've taken the girl out 3 or 4 times, and things look good, and then you go to a big date, and all of a sudden everybody's dressed up, and you go and have a drink or dinner and dancing, and the next thing you know, the girl says, 'Oh, I got a headache.' And you just, take me home and call me next week." I said, "That's a trap game, where you're supposed to win, but you can't get it done."
Kind of like we did in Cleveland last week. I'll bring it up myself. Bill, what do you think about this this Packers Lions matchup? It's Thanksgiving Day, of course. The Lions playing at home in the dome.
Well, I mean,
I don't want you to give me a winner. We're just talking about the matchup.
Yeah, I got it. For the Packers, it is their best chance to show people that they are an actual contender. They're a team that I've strongly believed in. If they get into the playoffs, they're going to be trouble for whoever. But a poor showing here would definitely begin to damage their own confidence, and then also probably give teams a way to attack them. But it's probably the most important game to this point in the season for the Packers.
Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Jordan Love stays on target, they have a shot. They do have a 3-game lead over Arizona and Tampa Bay for playoff and thing. So it's not a must win for the Packers. But if they want to have any shot of maybe snatching the division, like if for to be the spoiler for the division, like if they can beat the Lions, and then if Minnesota can then beat Detroit at the end of the year, depending on what happens with the other games, it might make the division race kind of interesting. But I think for playoff purposes, this is not a must-win game for the Packers. But I think, like Bill said, this is an important game for them in terms of to show what they have in terms of talent in that division, that they're right there with the Lions and the Vikings.
Let's see. The next game, Dave, would be the division-leading Seahawks are playing the Smurfs, the Cardinals. We saw last week the Cardinals break down at the last minute and get defeated. That second half defense seems to break down. But what do you think here? The Seahawks actually had the toughest closing schedule over the Cardinals. So if the Cardinals can win, it might be a distinct advantage.
Yeah, if they can beat the Cardinals 2 times in 3 weeks, it'd be huge. And the Cardinals have shown some weakness. I think for the Cardinals, they're playing at home. This division, I think, is really, really interesting in terms of the race. Just I think it was a week or so ago, Arizona was 6-4. The other three teams were 5-5. And so I think it's still a wide open race. The Seahawks now kind of control their destinies since they're now in first. Arizona would love to knock them off just to send that whole thing in a scramble. I think, like we talked last week, I mentioned I thought that San Francisco had the worst chance in this division. And I think that Buffalo game, man, they just kind of lost it in the snow. So I think that, we might be looking at the division winner here between Arizona and the Seahawks with, possibly, the Rams, depending on what they do, making a push. But this is real important for the Seahawks since right now they're in first, and then this would kind of cement their hold if they can pull off a second win in 3 weeks, this time in Arizona.
Yeah, Mr. Scott, are you a Geno Smith guy? What do you think about this matchup?
Boy, I thought, really, I was very kind of on needles and pins. I thought the little man was going to get us. The little man was playing a very good game. He's very elusive. It's just that their team just seems to fall down at the end. I don't know about their defense. And the Seahawks seem to be kind of just peaking a little bit now. They seem to be so not to necessarily pick the game, but Geno Smith is still showing resilience. But Arizona at home, I still have respect for the little man. I still can't overlook him. I mean, he really had us on the ropes. There's no question about it until the defense stepped up, at the end of the game. And, and the Vikings, it's very suspect because they have a kicker. Their kicker got hurt, and the guy that hikes the ball got hurt. So they have a guy that had never kicked in the league before. He's been on 3 or 4 teams, but he's never kicked in the league, and he's been winning games for him. So, I mean, I just have the thoughts of Gary Anderson, when I see this. And so, I'm afraid of the Cardinals, but the Seahawks. I like what Geno Smith is doing.
What about you, Bill?
Yeah. So, Chad Ryland and John Parker Romo are guys that have, especially John Parker Romo with the Vikings. If you grabbed him late off waivers and started him, you probably won your week fantasy-wise. But getting back to Arizona and Seattle, I think Seattle is starting to peak at the right time. And as was pointed out, Arizona tends to let teams wriggle off the hook sometimes late in games, while Seattle has a tendency, when they have a chance, very often to close out. They tend to have a little bit of a finishing kick towards the end of the game. So I tend to trust Seattle a little bit more than the other teams that they're facing in the West.
All right. Let's talk about the Chargers and the Chiefs, Bill. The Chargers actually, they would kind of need this, I think, to stay in the wild card race since, after all, Kansas City is 11-1. So someone needs in that division needs a win. Because I think in this may be a division where you only get one winner. And right now, Chiefs are number 1, Buffalo's number 2, Steelers are number 3. It might be kind of hard to get 2 teams out of this particular division. What's your thoughts here? Even though it does seem like Patrick is in somewhat of a slump. they still find a way to win. Bill?
Yeah, I wouldn't so much say that he's in a slump. I say he's pressing. Yeah, I don't think he's so much that he's in a slump. I think he's pressing. I think he's trying to make plays that aren't there to be made a little bit, sort of what we used to see out of Josh Allen in the past. But Allen is now beginning to less on an S on his chest, and Patrick just needs to let the game come to him. The team is now good enough as a whole, right? They're now good enough as a whole that he doesn't have to do as much as he used to, and which is good because he hasn't done as much as he used to this year. And part of it's just because of the kind of team they have around him. They have, a couple of years, but they aren't quite ready. Xavier Worthy is figuring the game out, and they've had, Pacheco just came back off of injury, but they've been sort of piecing together at running back. I think the other changing of the guard that's coming soon is at tight end. Kelsey is still a good player, but the time of him being a dominant player is coming to an end soon. We're going to see Noah Gray maybe emerge. So the team is in a little bit of transition. They're, once again, we talk about fixing the plane while it's in the air. Their pass rush is in transition. We see, while Chris Jones is still Chris Jones, we're seeing
You're going in and out, Bill.
Kansas State, and they still need to find another corner, but they can't do that at this point. They were in the Marshawn Lattimore sweepstakes, weren't able to land them, so they just have to, you are who you are at this point in the season. The Chargers are a year away, I think, but they're a dangerous team. They are physically, they look like a Big Ten team, right? They look like those Wisconsin teams of a few years ago, where it's just everybody's huge and they just want to bang at you. They are a big, strong team. They have a big, giant, strong quarterback. They have big running backs. They have a lot of big people, big wide receivers. They're a big team. They're a team filled with big dudes, and they're figuring it out. Greg Roman is a guy that still loves the running game. Brought a couple of his old, put the band back together with a couple of Ravens running backs. They're a year away. They need one more draft. They need a few more tweaks in free agency, but they're coming. Watch out for the Chargers. They are coming.
Mr. Scott, what do you think about that matchup, the Chiefs and the Chargers?
Well, I still think Mahomes is doing his thing, and you have to kind of ride with them till they get beat. But, boy, they just seem to have the world's biggest rabbit's foot, the horseshoe, the four-leaf clover, all of those things just – a guy fumbles the ball at the end. He's not looking, and they win the game. How long can this last? That's the thing. That's the question I have with them. And, I agree with Bill on the Chargers. They just seem like, could they get on a run at the end? If this is a game that it's going to be very interesting. And the Chiefs so far have just really been lucky to win several of these games. They really haven't outplayed the other teams. So, it's a good matchup. I don't see the other matchup on there that I didn't see the one about the cross-eyed gunslinger from last week at the Cleveland Browns. If he could stop throwing it to the other team, he actually might. Boy, he's got an arm like a bazooka. Really. That ball was flying out of his hand. But to the other team.
Well, Dave, what's your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I don't think that the Chargers, they're not going to overtake the Chiefs. But what makes this game so important is their, as you mentioned, their race with Denver. So Denver's on a bye. The Chargers are 2-1 in the division. A win puts them up 3-1 in the division. And right now Denver's 2-2, and they're set to play each other in a couple of weeks.
Right.
So I think that this is real important for the Chargers to win, and maybe like all this charm that the Chiefs have had that Anthony was talking about. Maybe some of the luster will be off, and the Chargers will take one from them. And the Chiefs are still going to win the division. I don't think that there's any doubt of that. But for the Chargers, man, if they could beat the Chiefs in this game, then that really sets them up well for their next matchup against Denver.
Well, Dave, now we come to the part of the program where I got a lot of beefs. Good God. All right. Even though the Steelers put up 44 points, there was a lot of stuff going on in it. Let's start with Joey Porter. Now, back in the old days, if you were a DB and you had that many holding calls, you'd be walking around with boxing gloves in the facility until your next game to teach you to keep your goddamn hands off the receiver. So that's beef number one. What are we going to do with Joey? I mean, Joey had a half a football field in penalties himself. At least.
6.
Okay. And then my second beef here. I'm looking at George Pickens, and to me, he's becoming AB right before my eyes. And I don't mean that in a good way. I know he's our number one wide receiver, but, damn it, if I could set him down a game, he'd be sitting right here next to me. You know how your high school coach used to pull you out and sit right here. Damn it, I take you to get off it. I mean, it just seems like, for all the things that Mike Tomlin has done and is doing with the team, it seems like I have one pure knucklehead developing here and the other one that just needs to settle down and get his technique a little better. Now we have another matchup with the Clowns. If it snows, can Pickens catch a pass in the snow? Is the snow going to get in his eyes this week? I mean, come on, talk to me here, Dave.
All right. Well, I mean, first Joey Porter and Mike Tomlin was asked about that in his Tomlin Tuesday, and he kind of made a basketball reference. He kind of said, "Hey, we're going to if we're playing against Shaq, we're going to take our fouls, we're going to take our penalties." And he also described T. Higgins as, we're not going to let him goon us. He's a goon. And for Mike Tomlin and his parlance, that's actually a compliment. That's a big physical receiver is what Tomlin is referring to. So I think what Joey Porter's assignment was don't let T. Higgins get away from you. And so he was handsy, and it tends to be that Joey Porter, his penalties come in bunches. Mm-hmm. There's like 3 games where I think he's been penalized 14 times this season, but most of them have been in 3 games. So it sounds like, he kind of had the assignment of being very physical and staying on top of the guys. Some of the penalties were really silly. There was a pass to the end zone that the receiver was not going to have an opportunity to catch, and he wrapped them up. But again, for Mike Tomlin, it's like, hey, he's very supportive of him, and he's like saying, hey, we want him to be physical, and we know that we're going to be taking penalties as we go along. My concern with it is that when it comes to the playoffs or a game where your seeding or your chance of going to the playoffs is riding on it, those penalties can really hurt. But he's done very well in some games. So we'll see. I don't know how much of this is being coached in him to stay physical like this. We'll have to see how the rest of the year transpires. So this is his second year in the league. Pickens. Again, one of the things that I like, and I don't know if any of you watched Hard Knocks last night, that they're featuring the AFC North. And in the very beginning of the game, the Bengals had a pick six. But basically, Pickens was pulled down by his helmet. If you watch the play, literally, I think it was that Newsome. I forget who the defensive back was, but he basically he Pickens did stumble, but he pulled him down by the helmet. Penalty. I mean, clear as day. Those referees that were a bit flag happy happened to miss that penalty. Mike Tomlin pulled him aside, and you saw him hugging him and talking to him, but you didn't hear what he was saying. During Hard Knocks, you actually heard Mike Tomlin was mic'd up in that game, and he was encouraging. He was telling George Pickens, hey, stay with me. This is not going to determine the game. And he was really trying to caution George Pickens to keep his head in the game and forget about that play. It's happened, and it's not going to decide the game. Very next touchdown, George Pickens. And so I think that's the good part. Now, the penalties that he had a taunting penalty when he dropped the ball on the defensive back. I mean, it was just stupid. But the positive thing that I saw in that play was Broderick Jones, young player who was a teammate of George Pickens. He was the one that grabbed George and was saying something. Now, we don't know what they said, but it was a young offensive lineman taking the initiative to take a hold of Pickens and talk to him. The final penalty was after he had a huge catch, first down, and he made the first down gesture, but he added a little flourish to it. He went like this. So I guess the NFL is now thought police. As far as the NFL officials were, he was in, and I think that most people watching it would say he was imitating a gun. And this is what Ben Roethlisberger used to do. Never penalized. Okay, after a big play. Is that a gun or not? I don't know. Okay, but now there's this. George Pickens says he was signaling first down, and there's multiple pictures of other players giving the exact same symbol like this. Like this. But what they're missing is that final flourish of him raising his arm. He claims that he was just showing a first down. So he's a project. What Russell Wilson pointed out, what he loves about George Pickens is he said it's an emotional game. He's so competitive. He's really vested into the game. And Russell Wilson loves that about him. And he said that Russell Wilson realizes, hey, he's now 35. He didn't come into the league until he was 23. And George Pickens in his second year happens to be 23. So basically what Russell Wilson was saying is, hey, he's young. And as Mike Tomlin and his conference said is, hey, he has to grow up fast. I think what's interesting here, and I apologize for taking so long, but these are very good questions that you gave, James. What's interesting is Deontay Johnson was just suspended by the Baltimore Ravens for refusing to play against Philadelphia. He wouldn't go into the game. Deontay Johnson outwore his welcome in Carolina after a couple of weeks. Deontay Johnson was considered a great route running wide receiver while he was with Pittsburgh. So when you take players like Antonio Brown, Deontay Johnson, Martavius Bryant, all these guys, they performed under Mike Tomlin. And you kind of, a lot of the side issues, you didn't hear so much about. It's AB later on, you did. Late in his career, you did. But for the bulk of his career, you didn't hear these side issues about Antonio Brown. You just heard about what a hard worker he was. One of the hardest working wide receivers I've ever seen. And so to me, what I see is this is a credit to the coaching from the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they've been managing these personalities. Other teams, well, they end up trading or suspending them. So I just hope that George Pickens, when it's time for him to have his first non-rookie contract signed, I hope he's proven that he's worthy to stay with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If not, he'll be going on somewhere else, and then we'll see how he performs.
Well, I hate to interrupt these great platitudes for
Well, I was going to ask you something there, Mr. Scott, because you have always been a little down on Mr. Tomlin, and we kind of talked about it a little bit before you came in. If not Mike Tomlin, who?
Well, I'll just come back with the question that I was going to ask. In the last game, they inserted Justin Fields in that game with all of the weather and all. Why would you insert Justin Fields? Because he's not going to throw the ball. He's not.
He had a yard to go.
What did he do in that game?
Yeah, it was 3rd and 1 yard.
And what did he do? Did he run or did he pass?
Well, just what you knew he was going to do.
See, there's something called results bias. A lot of people don't like that play because he passed the ball. But actually, it was the perfect play to call. It's 3rd and 1. Justin Fields comes in, and as you just said, everyone expected him to run. Nobody expected him to go down the ball. But Tomlin had confidence in his player. The results bias is that, hey, unfortunately, the execution wasn't there. But the call, to me, was the perfect call. And even Mike Hilton in this Hard Knocks, what I liked about Hard Knocks, I never really liked the show that much before. But what was interesting is they were showing the Bengals and the Steelers preparing for the game in their pre-meetings. And just short clips. Mike Hilton, former Steeler, is now with the Bengals. And they were talking about 3rd and short. And Mike Hilton was saying, Mike Tomlin's not going to be satisfied with just the first down. He wants more. In other words, Mike Tomlin is an aggressive coach, is basically what Mike Hilton was saying.
Dave, why don't you catch us up with our results here? It looks like Bill left us here for a minute, but how are we doing now?
All right. So, and Anthony, he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame, by the way. Mike Tomlin, that is.
I'm not disputing that.
Okay. So, for catching up, we had to do weeks 12 and 13 together. And on the spread in week 12, James and Anthony, you got 7 out of 13 picks right. You guys were the best. In week 13, I'm sorry that Bill isn't there, but he had 10 out of 16 picks correct, which was outstanding. For the season, Bill remains in first place with 58.3% correct calls on the spread. And James, you're not too far behind. You're at 56.7%. So you're right up there. You're in the money. You're in the black. In the over-unders for week 12, Anthony, 9 out of 13. Great job. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to you.
Under and over is my game. Over is my game.
I don't know what happened week 13. You were only 2 out of 15.
Weather. The weather got me. Changing the weather.
Maybe. You got to go back to your strategy from week 12. I took week 13 with 10 out of 15. So then for the season, Bill's been leading in both categories all season, but Don snuck up and he's now ahead at 53.8% correct. And Bill is the only other person over 50% at 51.4%. So those are our that's the catch up on our picks.
All right, then let's get down to it. Of course, we talked about this matchup Thanksgiving Day. The Green Bay Packers are visiting the Detroit Lions. The Packers are getting 3, and the over-under is 51.5. Dave.
Okay. I talked up Green Bay, but I'm still going with Detroit because that coach likes to run up the score. So I'm going to take Detroit, but the under in this case.
Mr. Scott.
Well, I think that 3 is a very low number. I mean, I think it should be close to a touchdown, even 6.5. I mean, 3 points is not enough. It's for me to just jump on it. But I'm still going to take the Packers. I'm still going to take the Packers. I'm going to take a shot with that, and I'm going to take the over.
I'm going to take the Lions and the over.
51.5, huh?
Okay. 51.5.
51.5, yeah.
Let's see. The next game, which would be Sunday, would be the Carolina Panthers getting 12.5 from the Eagles. They're playing at the Eagles, and the over-under is 46. No hook. 46. Mr. Scott.
Well, I got to take the Eagles. I mean, I'll take the Eagles and the under. I mean, I think they should dominate this team.
I'm going to take the Eagles and the under also. Dave?
I don't know. Carolina surprised a couple, but they've made some games closer. 12.5. I'm going to take Carolina. I don't think they're going to win, but I'll take the points in the under. Carolina in the under.
Okay. The Raiders are getting 6.5. They're playing at Tampa Bay, and the over-under is 46.5. I'll take Buccaneers and the over. Would you say, Dave?
Tampa Bay is giving 6.5.
They're giving 6.5.
Okay.
The LA Raiders are plus 6.5, and the over/under is 46.5.
Okay. And you got Tampa Bay in the over.
I got Tampa Bay in the over.
So do I.
Mr. Scott?
Boy, I guess I'll follow that cab. Tampa Bay in the over.
Okay. The next game is Ayahuasca is playing the Miami Dolphins. And the fans are giving the Jets 6, and the over/under is 45. No hook. Who you got, Mr. Scott?
Gosh, I mean, under real circumstances, I wouldn't touch this. But I'll take Miami. I think the Jets are just a mess, and boy, they do have some defense. I'll take the under. 46 is kind of a lot of. It's 46.5, right?
No, 45.
Oh,
46 was the last one. It's just 45. No.
Right, 45. Yeah, I'll still take the under. Miami under.
Yeah, I'll take the Dolphins and the under. Dave?
I'm taking Miami in the over.
Okie doke. Dave, the Falcons are playing the Minnesota Vikings. they are getting 6 points, and the over-under is 45.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take Minnesota in the over. Atlanta just that whole division is kind of topsy turvy.
Mr. Scott.
Yeah. Well, the Vikings have almost kind of been winning like Kansas City. I mean, in some ways, with the horseshoe and the field goal, the guy who hasn't kicked any field goals. I think I'll take Atlanta to cover, but the game over.
All
Bill
right,
is back.
Yeah, I
Bill.
see Bill. I see Bill is back. Bill, you let's get you caught up here. Let's see. Where were we, Dave? I got to get that. I missed my.
Okay, we got the first one is Green Bay at Detroit. Detroit is -3. The over under is 51.5.
Oof. Okay. So they think it's going to be a high scoring game, and they're probably right. 51.5 is probably about right too, but I'll take the over. I think it is going to be a bit of a shootout. It's in Detroit, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll take the over, and I don't think they cover. I think if they win, they just barely win this. I think it's going to be a real dogfight. So I say no to Detroit covering, and I say yes to the over.
Okay. Then the next one is the New York Jets at Miami. Miami is -6, and the over under is 45. No hook.
45 no hook. Okay. I'll take the under. I think both offenses end up sort of sputtering and in this game, and I will take. I don't think Miami covers. I think Miami wins, but I think they win by 4. I don't think they win by 6.
Okay. Then the next one is um, Carolina at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is -12.5.
Oh, so
And the over under is 46. No hook.
I'll take the over on the 46. I think Philadelphia wins, but 12.5 is huge in the NFL. I think Carolina's playing better football lately. I think Deontay Johnson ends up being sort of addition by subtraction. Jalen Coker is back from injury. So I think that actually helps them. I think Jalen Coker has actually a pretty good game. Chuba Hubbard is maybe the most underrated running back in the NFL. I think he has a good game. So yeah, I mean, in a psychological victory, they lose by 10 as opposed to the 12.5. So I think they deny the Eagles a cover. I have nobody covering so far, but I feel like I might be setting myself up for a bad week. But I think I'll take an over on the it's 45, no 46.
46, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll take an over on the. I think they get to at least 48 points in this game, and I'll say no on the 12.5. That's a huge number.
All right. And then the next one is the Las Vegas Raiders at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is -6.5. The over-under is 46.5.
Okay, finally a cover. I think Tampa Bay covers, and I think they go over. I think Tampa Bay scores a lot actually in this game. Start your Buccaneers if you're a fantasy player. I think both running backs. I think both Rashad White and Bucky Irving have good games. I know Mike Evans is still not 100%, but I think he gets at least 1, maybe 2 touchdowns in the red zone. And, put a gold star by Kate Otten. I think he's going to have 6 catches for like 70-something yards and maybe a touchdown as well. They're going to run it up. So, yeah, I think that it's a big game for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, we all took the same thing, Tampa Bay in the over. So then the last one, and we will also need James on this one, is Atlanta at Minnesota. Minnesota is giving 6, and the over-under is 45.5.
Yes, the Kirk Cousins revenge game. Let's say you said 6.5 is the number in terms of the
Six.
Oh, just 6.
Just 6.
Okay, the Vikings are getting 6. I think the Vikings cover. So 2 covers back to back after no covers early. I think the Vikings do cover, and the over under was 40. How many?
45.5.
I'll take the over, and I think the Vikings cover.
I'll take the Vikings in the over also.
And you took the over, right, Bill?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay. That's it. He's caught up, James.
Okay. Mr. Scott, the Browns are playing the Steelers. The Steelers are giving the Clowns 6.5.
Oh.
The over-under is 43.5.
Okay, you're not talking to Brown. You're talking Baltimore.
No, I'm talking about Cleveland.
He's talking about Cleveland.
Baltimore is on the bye.
Yep.
Cleveland's playing the
yes,
Steelers.
but this time they're playing in Pittsburgh, not in Cleveland.
Right.
Oh man, the cross-eyed gunslinger. Oh. And what's the line again?
6.5, and the over/under is 43.5.
Well, it's really hard to take. I guess I got to take Pittsburgh. I don't really want to. Well, to be contrarian, I'm going to take Cleveland to cover.
Okay.
Gunslinger puts up points. I mean, I'll take the under. I don't think Russell Wilson can continue to throw for 400 points. I mean, that's an 400 yards. That's an anomaly. I mean, that's just you're not going to see that anymore. It's not going to even come close to that.
What do you say, Dave?
I'm taking the under. He had 497 yards. Now, here's the thing. This Hard Knocks with Cleveland, the coach is Zach Taylor, right, Bill?
Zach Taylor is the coach of the Bengals. And
Stefanski. Kevin
is the head coach of the Browns. Yeah.
Basically, what Stefanski told the team, he asked them, "Hey, do you guys want to be in the playoffs?" And they're, of course, yeah. He goes, "Well, we're in the playoffs," and he's basically pointing at their scheduling, including all the AFC North games. So, what that told me, and the way the team was responding to him, is that Cleveland's not ready to pack the bags yet. They still want to play, and they want to sweep Pittsburgh for the first time in like 20 years. Yes, so I think Pittsburgh's going to win, but I think Cleveland's going to cover, and I'm going to take the under.
I'm following you this time, Dave. I'm taking Pittsburgh and the under. I don't think they're going to put up another 44 points. This is a hard game for me because I don't really see our secondary stopping Jameis Winston.
Don't have to. He'll throw it to him.
Yeah, but is he going to throw 3 picks? I mean, he might throw 4 or 5, but I'm just thinking, I think we're going to win, but I don't think we'll cover, and I don't think that this is going to be a game that's going to have those type. No, you know what? I'm going to.
So you're taking Cleveland in the points or Pittsburgh?
No, I'm taking Pittsburgh, but I'm taking the over.
Okay, got it.
Bill, I think Bill's the last one in this one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think the Steelers do win, but I think that, as it was pointed out, I think Cleveland gives them just holy hell in this game. I think that Jameis probably throws another pick 6 because it's something he's good at, but he also is going to throw like 3 touchdowns and probably run for 1. He's going to have one of those Jameis games. Like Jameis is one of those guys who what was they used to call that? A Gordie Howe hat trick, right?
Fat trick.
A goal of his right, 2 goals, an assist, and a fight. Well, in his case, it's like a couple of touchdown passes, a touchdown run, and a pick six. I think Jameis goes out and Jameis it up. I think that the Steelers managed to hang around and win, but it's going to be a white knuckle job. I don't think they're going to win by 6.5. They're going to win by Chris Boswell last second field goal probably. But yeah, they'll win, but not by much. And the over under was how many points?
43.5.
Man. I feel like it's gonna be an over. I feel like it's like 44 is probably what it, not by a lot, but they go over. So 44 I think is where it's at. 24, 21, 24, 20, that kind of thing.
Everybody, Dave?
Yes.
Okay, Bill, the Saints are at the Giants. The Saints, the Giants are, the Saints are giving the Giants 4.5 at home.
Yep.
And the over-under is 41.
I'll take the over, and I'll take the Saints. I think the Saints are going to, not that it matters, close out the season strong. I mean, because they can't make the playoffs, but I think they're trying to show people that they're not as bad as the Giants, or they're not like amongst the worst teams in the NFL. Certain teams, when they play for pride, right? And some just sort of finish the season. Watch for the Saints to play for pride. Watch them to play like a team that has something to play for, even though they don't.
I like the Giants, young Tracy, and I think maybe it's time for them to show off their young rookie. I'm going to take the Giants and the points, and I'm going to take the under. Mr. Scott.
And the under and over is what?
41.
I don't like either team. I think I'm going to take the Saints in the over.
Dave.
Same. Saints in the over.
Okay. Am I the only one that took the Giants?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the only one that took the under.
Okay.
This could work out.
Okay, the Jaguars against the Titans. The Jaguars are getting 3.5, and the over-under is 39.5. I'm going to take the Titans and the over. Dave?
I'm taking the Titans in the under.
Bill?
I too will take the Titans in the under.
Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I'll stick with that too. Titans in the under.
Who's going to be the Jaguars quarterback?
Don't know.
It's all for X.
Well, right now, Trevor's on IR, so it's not him.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Scott, the Seahawks are visiting the Smurfs. The Smurf is giving them 2.5, and the over-under is 44.5.
Boy, I tell you, that little man looks like he's healthy, and they're at home. And if they can win this, they can really make this thing interesting. They can really make it interesting. So I'm going to take the little man and the over.
I'm going to follow Mr. Scott. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm going to take the Seahawks in the over.
Dave?
I like Arizona at home, but I'm going to take the under.
Okay. Dave, the Bills are at the Rams. The Bills are giving the Rams 3.5, and the over-under is 49.5. Bill.
I'll take the Bills and the over.
I will also take the Bills and 50 points. 50 points. I'm going to take the Bills in the over.
I thought you said 49.5.
Well, that means it's 50, right?
Oh, yeah, that's what they got.
So I'm just figuring it's 50 points between the two of them. So I'm taking the over here. Nakua and Cup is back, looking for Josh to get at least 2 touchdowns. Maybe we'll see a little bit of Amari Cooper this week. I don't know. Who's left, Dave?
Myself and Anthony.
Anthony?
Oh, I'll take the Bills. I think the Bills are going to be a thorn in Kansas City. I mean, I think Kansas City's going to, and I'll take the over in that game. But the Bills look like they're kind of on a roll. And these horseshoes and rabbit's foots, these things are not going to continue to go for Kansas City. So.
Dave?
Yeah, Buffalo looked like they were having fun in that snow.
They always look like they're having fun in the snow. Everybody except for the team that comes.
They're looking loose, and I like that. And so I'm going to take Buffalo in the over.
I still have that picture of you in my mind from last year, Dave.
Sitting on that pile of snow in the stadium.
Okay, Dave, staying with you. The Chicago Bears are getting 4 points. They're going to the West Coast. They're playing the 49ers, and the over-under is 44. Dave?
Well, I tell you, conversely, San Francisco just look now again the conditions, but I would have expected more out of them. They just the way they were slip sliding around, and then they lose McCaffrey for the season. I'm going to take Chicago in the over. I think San Francisco really. They damaged themselves. So I'm taking Chicago in the over.
What are you taking here, Bill?
I think the 49ers have a big bounce back game. I think that they're going to be angry when they watch that tape. And I think you're going to see some of the team that we thought we'd see, some of the weeks that we thought we'd see. Also, Isaac Guerrero is bigger and faster. Now, he's not the receiver that McCaffrey is, but as a pure runner, he's like a faster Isaiah Pacheco. For those who aren't familiar with him, you'll soon be familiar with him. He's going to score.
I picked him up in my fantasy league.
Good for you. He's going to rush for 112 yards and score 2 touchdowns. He's an absolute beast. And soon you'll know his name if you don't already know it. So, yeah, big bounce back game from the 49ers. I think they win that game outright and they go over.
All right. Mr. Scott?
Oh, boy. The 49ers quarterback is healthy, right?
Yes.
I'll take the 49ers, and I'll take the over.
I'm going to take the 49ers, and the Chicago puts up a lot of points even though they lose. I'm going to take the 49ers and the over. Bill, is it Bill or Dave, or both of you?
No, we're done with that one.
Okay.
Yes, we're done with that one, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Scott, the Chargers are playing the Chiefs. The Chiefs are giving the Chargers 4 points, and the over-under is 43.
I'm going to still ride with the Chiefs and the over.
Yeah, I'm going to ride with the Chiefs and the over. Bill?
What was the over under?
43.
Oh yeah, yes.
No.
Chiefs the over. Chiefs the over. 43. What do they know that I don't know? 43 seems crazy low. Yeah, Chiefs in the over. 43. Huh. Now I have to wonder what the heck's going on. Isn't that the second lowest line of all the games so far?
So far. Yeah, we had second, third actually. We had another one that was 44.
Third lowest. Okay.
Yeah,
third
third.
lowest. I know it was like a 41 and a half and a yeah, okay, but yeah, I mean the way the NFL is now, unless your offense is terrible, it's hard not to score in the 20s.
Well, it could be snowing, and maybe it's snowing in Kansas City.
Okay, sure, okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm trying. I'm
I mean,
with you. I'm with you. 43 seems like it seems like either one of them.
Like they're giving away money. Like I'm gonna have to see what's left in my 401k.
I'm going to be the contrarian. Everybody took KC in the over. I'm going to take the Chargers in the under.
All right. Well, let's
I'll
see
be
how big.
contrarian on this one.
All right. Well, let's see how big you
I think you might be right on the Chargers. I still would like to see how the heck both those teams don't reach 43 somehow. I mean, if the Chargers win, they could get to 43. I mean, like they have a really.
I mean, either one of them could get to 43. That's what I'm saying. It does seem like,
right, exactly.
it does, like maybe there's a big snowstorm or something coming through. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have to look up the weather.
They forget to turn on the heating coils in the stadium underneath the field. Something, I guess, maybe.
All right, Bill, the last one. Why don't you give us your prediction and your final thoughts? The Cincinnati Bengals are playing the Dallas Cowgirls. The Cowgirls are getting 5.5 at home, and the over-under is 49.5.
Ooh. I think the Bengals managed to cover. Now the only question is, can the Cowboys score enough to get to 49.5? Let's say the Bengals score 31. That means that they would just need to score 18, 19, I guess 19 to get. Can they score
15.
19? Oh, okay.
They scored 15.
50. Oh, yeah, they can do that. So yeah, I'll take the over then. Right. Okay, yeah, I'll take the Bengals and the over. I think the Bengals, the long frustrated Bengals, take out their long frustrations on a very diminished Dallas team that is, I think, in sort of a semi-death spiral. So yes, give me the Bengals exacting, not really revenge. I mean, the Dallas didn't do anything to them, but they're not going to think of it that way. So yes, give me the Bengals and give me the over. And my final thought is, we talked about Mac Brown, and he's not going to be alone. This is going to be the final game coming up for a bunch of coaches, some of whom don't know it yet, right? This is a time of year where people lose their jobs in football. Graduate assistants, position coaches, equipment managers, and that doesn't make the news, right? When the equipment manager at Seton Hill University gets fired, we're not gonna hear when Robert Morris College lets go their director of football operations. That's not gonna make the news, right? But lots of people in football are about to lose their jobs, and some of them will find other jobs right away. Some of them won't. And when people who work in football, it hits you a little differently than if you're just a person just watching the news, the little crawl at the bottom of the screen or whatever. Some of these people are going to have to uproot their families. They moved to whatever place where they're living now for that job. And once that job is gone, they have no reason to stay in, Kearney, Nebraska, or, Uppsala, or wherever it is they moved to. And so now they are going to become, nomads, whatever, looking for that next football job. We always hear about the the head coaches and how much they make and things like that. But what we don't realize is that, it's a staff of 30, 40 people at a big school more, but even at, places like Rhode Island, you're still talking about a platoon's worth of individuals involved in running the football program, from, like I said, equipment on up through, feeding and nutrition and strength and conditioning. And so have a little grace, have a little sympathy for what many of those people are going to go through, because generally when the head coach gets fired, so does everybody else. Whether they are doing a great job or a bad job or whatever, they just sort of get swept out. Not all the time, but often, just because the head coach gets fired, they often, like I said, empty everything out so that the new person can bring in their people, which I do understand, but it's brutal. So I always think about that this time of year. We're closing up on a season ending, and like I said, lots of people will have to look for, brighten up their resumes and refresh their LinkedIn's and all that good stuff, because they're going to be out there trying to find work.
Yeah, there will be pink slips for Christmas. Dave, prediction and thoughts.
All right. So, Dallas is really, it's December and it's Dallas. But Cincinnati, they have a great offense, but man, does their defense stink. Oh, so I think Cincinnati, I'm going to take them and the over.
I'll follow you.
All right. And then for my final thoughts, during Thanksgiving, there were 3 NFL games, another one on Friday. There were, NCAA games on Thanksgiving. NFL teams that weren't playing were meeting, on Thanksgiving Day, preparing for their upcoming games. And the same thing's going to happen at Christmas. And I always enjoy my holidays. And, I think about everybody that has to work. And I appreciate all those athletes, working to entertain us on the holiday. But then I think about all the military people that are deployed around the world. I think about first responders that have to be on the job, police and firemen and emergency medical technicians, hospital workers, people that with stores that are open, they're having to work on what for everybody else is a holiday, and hotel workers. So I just want to voice my appreciation of all those people that do work on the holidays to make it a normal, happy day for everybody else that doesn't have to.
Great thought there, Dave. Great thought. You and Bill looking out for the little guy there. Mr. Scott, your prediction and final thoughts.
Well, I'll take the Cowboys, the over. I think they have nothing to play for but to just score some points. And people are trying to hold on to their jobs, as Bill is saying. And I guess my final thought is just I was really hoping, because I saw a glimpse, that maybe Jim Marshall might be considered for the Hall of Fame. Mm. And they had a list of names that were kind of up. And then I just see didn't get hardly any votes. I mean, and then I think of Ed White's in, Mick Tingelhoff is in, Paul Krause is in, Carl Eller's in, Alan Page is in, Brent Tarkenton is in. I mean, how can he not be in? I mean, he probably played almost as many games as all of them put together and all those starts, but that they just continue to hold this run the wrong way. I hate seeing that, but people forget that in that game he recovered a fumble, and they also won the game. They also came back and won the game. So it looked like he's going to get a chance, and this looks like, I don't know how many chances you get for the seniors, or how many times they go around. But
you can, as long as you meet the minimum threshold, you can continue to be made a semifinalist, finalist, whatever, for the seniors committee. You only get a certain number of chances as a modern era before you kick over to the senior side.
Okay. Well, maybe there's still hope.
All right, guys. Well, hey, great show tonight as always. Appreciate everybody's time, and I look forward to the next two shows before Christmas. It's getting hot in here. We'll see. Everybody's got big division games left, and we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, hopefully Demetrius will get off his load management. You know, can't play a day after a win. You know, so
I haven't heard too much from Demetrius. I have to catch him on cornbread and Kool-Aid. But
There we go.
But anyway, have a good weekend, guys. Appreciate you as always, and look forward to talking to everybody on the Sports Crib next week. Have a great
take care. Take care.
See you all next week.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.